Hi guys, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage, and Merry Christmas. This is the Christmas Day special. It's going to be as long as it is. I don't know. I always make a Christmas video for you guys, so when you're sitting in your chair moaning and groaning after the feast, you can absorb some Claremont for an hour or two, or maybe even 3. So what we're going to be doing is you'll recall we went down to see Kirk in New Jersey and got this 1939, circa 1939 9N engine for our mostly 1939 9N. We're trying to make it more 39 as we go. So we got this engine. We took it apart. It's pretty decent inside. So what we're going to do, start to finish, we're going to do a backyard freshen up job on this thing and get it put back in the tractor and fire it up and see how she works. I'll put a link in the description box down below to the playlist on this tractor. We've got a playlist for it. And you'll be able to watch, because if you didn't see it already, the video where we actually got into this engine and took it apart and saw what was in it. We didn't really find too much terribly wrong with it, other than it could use a set of rod bearings. And the worst thing was the valve train was wiped out. It still had the old mushroom style lifters in it, and they are worn out, and the valves were flopping all over the place. So that's what we're going to do. We're not changing sleeves or pistons or nothing. We just got a set of rings. We're going to give it a squeak and tickle hone job. Put a set of rings in it. Put new rod bearings in it. The main bearings were fine. We've got a gasket set for it and a complete valve train kit. So we'll give it a nice valve job and get that all put back together. And we should have us a nice running little engine. So the first thing we're going to do, I guess, is get the crankshaft out of it, get it right side up, and have a look at the bores. So far, so good. We got number 1 cylinder cleaned up, and I'm going to show you on number 2 how we got there. The first thing we have to do is work on the ridge. Right at the top here, because the top, you can see it there. It's hard to tell in the video. Did I get a better view in one of these other cylinders? Yeah, you can see it there. See that dark area right at the top? So we call that the carbon ridge, and it does kind of get a coating of carbon on it, but mostly that is the original unworn bore. You come to here, that's as far up as the top compression ring goes. And that's where all of the wear is. This is where, right at the very top of the stroke, where the fire starts. That's where the piston gets side load put on it during the combustion process. And it's stopping and starting. There's the most heat there. The most stress on the cylinder bore is right here at the top. So what we have to do when we're going to re-ring this thing, especially when we're putting in new rod bearings, this thing could possibly come up maybe a tiny bit more than it came up before, and it could start smashing into this ridge. Theoretically, I'm talking by a microscopic amount. But at any rate, we don't want that to happen. So what we do, first step, we'll go through the reconditioning of this bore here, number 2, and I'll show you step by step how we do it. So the first thing we're going to use is this tool. This is a ridge reamer, and it fits into the cylinder. And it's got a hardened steel cutting edge up here, and it will start cutting away at this ridge. Now, the first time you go around, it's easy because it just peels the carbon off. But once you get through the carbon, you're actually starting to cut parent material. You don't want to take too much. You want to take it just almost, so it's almost gone, and then finish it up with the hone. So this one here, it's an old Blue Point one. It comes with replaceable shoes for this side to fit the various bores. And then you slowly crank it up. Now, we have to be careful and not get too aggressive with the cuts we take with this thing, because these are steel sleeves in these engines. They're really hard, and it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort to cut them without damaging anything. So you just go around, you can hear it cutting, and tighten it up a little bit. Hear that? That's cutting. And another mistake we don't want to make with this thing is always stopping in the same spot to adjust the wheel, because the cutter's only on one side. So once it makes that first little bit of a cut, it kind of loosens up and it won't cut as much on the other side. So this time we'll tighten it here. Next time we'll tighten it over there, and so on and so forth. Just keep it pushed down. And just keep working it. And eventually, you'll get to where you can feel that ridge in there is just starting to disappear. And that's when we'll be ready for the hone. This engine really was in pretty decent shape. You could tell that it had been running good just by looking at the pistons. They weren't all coated in carbon and messed up. The spark plugs weren't all fouled up or anything. It was just, you know, maybe a little bit tired. So we'll freshen it up here, and we should have a good engine for our 39 9N, or our 39-ish 9N. I'm pretty certain it, you go back and watch the first video, and I'm pretty certain we conclusively proved that this thing started its life as a late, albeit late, but as indeed a 1939 9N Ford. All of the clues are there. Okay, so we've gone around a few times. I'm going to start jibber-jabbering, and we'll have a look at what we've done. So you can see there, it's cutting about halfway down the ridge. So once we get to where we start to not be able to see the ridge anymore, that's when we start feeling with our finger. You know, it's still kind of pronounced over here. That's probably the thrust side of the piston, right? So anyway, we'll just keep at it. I'll be back when I'm done. Alrighty, so now we can see here, we've got this ridge mostly taken down. You can still, if you go with your fingernail, you can still just feel it. You could just feel it a tiny bit, but it's mostly gone. So we're going to clean it up the rest of the way with our hone. And this here is just a flexible cylinder hone you can buy anywhere. You could probably even rent these at your local rental center. There is a proper cylinder hone that if we were doing a little more, if we had a little more of a repair to do, if we had to take taper out or wanted to make sure 1000% that this thing was perfectly round, we would use one of those. But this is good enough for what we're doing. And we're just going to run it up and down and get this bore cleaned up. We'll check it periodically. That's starting to look pretty good. Maybe a little bit more and we'll be all done. We're not really trying to take out too much material. We're just trying to basically break the glaze that's in those bores and just make sure you've got a nice transition to where that ridge used to be. And whatever you do, don't pull this thing out too far or push it down too far or, well, you'll get a nasty surprise. And that came out excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other two. And when I come back, we're going to do our final dressing with a dingle ball hone. A dingle ball hone? Or a, I don't know. What do they call those things? A ball hone? I don't know. You'll see it when we get to it. So now that we've got that done, the last thing we're going to do is come with our little ball hone here and just give it a final... just like that. And look at that. Isn't that nice and pretty? Looks great. That'll give our new rings something to bite into. Now what we're going to do is clean out the little reliefs where the valve seats are. I've already gone with a scraper and picked out some of the larger chunks. And then to clean them up the rest of the way, we're just going to use various brushes in our electric drill here. And get the worst of the stuff out. It's not that hard. The stuff isn't really that hardened in there. Just like that. And this wire brush won't damage the valve seats at all, but it'll let us get it cleaned up. Those valve seats look really good. We'll see what the kind of a pattern we get on them when we drop our new valves in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to find another some kind of little cleaning thing to go down and clean the bores where the valve guides rest. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so we got this little bottle brush here, and this will clean the bores where our valve guides press into. Don't have to go crazy. Just gotta make sure there's no chunks of anything in there. And there we go. So now we need to clean the deck of the block. And we have to be careful. You don't want to just go hitting it with a sanding block, because as you can see here, the sleeves sit up just a bit proud of the deck of the block, you know. And we don't want to mess with that. These need to be maintain their perfect flatness all around to ensure that the head gasket seals. So anyway, before we do anything, we're going to just clean this up a bit. We've got just a little solvent here. And we're going to clean the worst of the guck off of it. And then we'll give the deck a good scrape with a nice sharp scraper. It's got definitely the remains of a bunch of gasket shellac on here, so we'll have to get that all off. And then we'll see what we do about the final clean on it. So we got just a nice sharp scraper, and we go at it. Anything that's sticking up too much, this will take right off. There we go. So, just like the old days, being an apprentice, get the old sanding block and start at it. There's a lot of crud on this, and it's probably going to clog the paper a couple of times. So, we're just going to do this side with this, and we'll have to get a little more creative around these boards, around the bores, pardon me, and be more careful, like I said, that we don't mess up the tops of these sleeves. It's okay to touch them a little bit with the block. We just want to make sure they're clean. Get the worst of it off. Look at it's how it's clogging the emery. But that's okay. So here we go. We got a wire brush on the drill, and we'll just go around. This will clean, but it won't remove any metal. Look at that. Yeah, liking it. That looks pretty darn good, doesn't it? Excellent. Now we're just going to spray a little of this stuff and let it run down the bores to kind of keep them from rusting until we get around to working on them. This thing is going to need a thorough cleaning too. That's another step before we assemble anything. There, just get a clean rag and kind of smear this stuff around a little bit. It's CRC, I think it's CRC 556. Good stuff. It's kind of a protectant. It's a very light kind of oily stuff. There we go. That'll protect all of that. Okay, that's one side done. Now we're going to lay it over on its side and we're going to work on the open side of the block. Now there's a few things on this side of the block that we talk about. All this guck in here, excuse me, that'll be dealt with when we get the block outside and actually clean it. It's just, oh, pardon me, I got a tickle in my throat. It's a little too cold outside to worry about it right now. But that's just kind of typical of the junk you'll find inside these things. But what we're mainly concerned about right now is the gasket surface. And on these Ford tractor engines, you need to watch out. This is the worst area here, right around the number 4 exhaust port, because all these exhaust ports feed into a similar, the manifold, the outlet is at the back, right? So the further back you go, the hotter it gets. And back here, because there's no bolt at the end, this corner of the manifold tends to lift a little bit. And once it lifts, it'll burn the gasket. And then this starts getting eaten away in here. Sometimes when they're bad, you have to get some high temperature epoxy and build it back up. And you're usually okay. We're going to give it a sand and see what it looks like. Maybe even check it with a straight edge. And see what we've got. You can also see here where it's been pulled a bit. See that those shiny spots? Those are high spots. It's been pulled a bit around those 2 bolt holes. So I'm going to work on this for a while and I'll come back and we'll see what we've got. So with that all cleaned up, we got our unscientific straight edge here, and check this thing out. And it definitely has a few low spots here and there. So what we will probably do is when we put this thing together, we'll put a little exhaust cement around these ports and let it set up a little bit. And then we'll crush it down with a nice new gasket and keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. At least it's easily accessible once it's on the tractor. Sometimes if they're bad, you have to put 2 gaskets and then kind of clamp it down. We're not really going to be working this tractor exceptionally hard. It's going to be more of a toy. So it'll be harder for us to blow that gasket back out of there, right? Anyway, that's pretty much it for this side. We're going to go ahead now and just clean the gasket surface on the front here. You can see there's some old gasket stuck there. We'll get that all cleaned up, and then we'll flip it upside down and have a look at the saddles. In the bottom, there's not really a ton to do. We're going to just clean the pan rails, clean the parting surface where the main caps go. We could, if we wanted to, get a straight edge and some feeler gauges and check to make sure our line bore is good. But we know when we took it apart, the crank turned beautifully and there was no wear or anything on the mains. But maybe just for the sake of doing it, we will do that just to show you the procedure. Why not, eh? So anyway, before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff cleaned up and then we'll get out the straight edge. All right. So we're going to go ahead now and just double check our line bore. We've got a straight edge and a mechanic's feeler gauge or a machinist's feeler gauge. It's 1.5 thousandths of an inch. So we're going to lay our straight edge in the bearing saddles. And first we're going to check the middle one. And we want to make sure when we're pushing down on our straight edge that feeler gauge is locked up. And it is. Now we're going to check the rear one. Locked up. And we'll check the front one. Locked up. So that's good. This block is fine. It's still straight. The line bore is true in it. Sometimes these old engine blocks, over time, they kind of core, they just season, and cast iron is a lot more fluid than you may think it is. And they kind of move around a bit, especially if maybe they've been really hot somewhere along the line. Something might kind of end up not quite lined up how it was, and you get yourself in a situation where you may have to have your block line honed or line bored. But this one's fine. We're good to go. We've got one more side to check. That's the closed side of the block, and then we're going to start chasing threads. Alrighty, what we've got to do on this side is, well, not a ton, but we've got only 2 frost plugs or Welch plugs on these old 9N original engines. The earliest ones had none, but this later 1939 one should have 2, and that's correct. I think over time they added 2 more. What we got to do is get a brush, and we just want to clean up the seats where these things go in, because we got to pop new ones in. This one's in a little bit rough shape. Hopefully it'll be all right and not leak, but we should be okay. Yeah, they look pretty good. We'll put some Permatex 2 in there and pound the new frost plugs in, and we should just be fine. And I think we can, will this thing fit down here? We could clean out the bore where the filler neck goes, or breather tube, whatever you want to call it. There we go, that's done. Now we got to get some taps, and we're going to start tapping threads. When it comes to chasing the threads, I just use a cordless drill in low range with the clutch set pretty loose. So if there's any resistance at all, rather than breaking the tap in the block, it just stops turning. To do these tractor engines, 5/16, 3/8, and 7/16 should get you most of the holes. There's a couple of pipe taps that we can run through it later, but for the most part, now this starter one, got to be careful because it's in so tight to the block, we can't get the tap in straight. We'll have to do that one by hand. But that one there, you can see, and that's what we do. We'll go around, while it's over on its side, we can also go around and do all the oil pan holes. Well, I think we'll need a 1/2-inch one to do the mains. We'll just tap every single hole. Man, that tap is a real wobbly little fella. Well, anyway, it goes in, so. Alrighty, I've got the crankshaft chucked up in the lathe. I can't turn it because I haven't got enough throw. It's just to hold it. It makes it a heck of a lot easier to work on. So we're just gonna go over the crankshaft a little bit, give the journals a little spit and polish, and so we've just got some emery off a roll, and I've ripped it into a thin strip, and we squirt some light oil on it, and we just kind of give it a clean like that. It's pretty messy right now. I haven't cleaned the crankshaft yet. We'll get to that once we're done this. We'll get it all cleaned up in the solvent tank. But for now, this is what we want to do. Just back and forth, back and forth. There we go. I think this is 180. We can go over it with something more fine when we're done if we would like. I had a nice clean wiper here. Oh, here it is. A clean towel. And then once we wipe it off, you can see it looks pretty darn good. See, that's a nice journal. So now we'll go ahead and do the rest of them. And when I'm done, I'll be back. After I finished with the 180, I went back over it with some 320 and it came out great. There's a couple of, you can see here, the odd little place where it's pitted. Just a tiny bit. It probably sat for years with moisture in the oil. And it kind of etched it a little bit. But for the kind of work this thing is going to do, it'll have thick, heavy oil in it. It'll be just fine. It'll go like that for a very long time. So what we got to do now is get this thing out of here and get it over to the solvent tank. And we can get it all cleaned up and get all the passages in it blown out and make sure it's clean and ready to go in the engine. So we got our block cleaned up. And let me tell you, that was a struggle because normally I would come out here and do it with some nice warm water and some soap and some degreaser and all my bottle brushes and do a really bang up job on it, you know. But, well, for whatever reason this year, nasty ass winter, well, it showed up about 6 weeks early in southern Ontario. So going outside is not an option. It's freaking cold and everything's full of snow and ice. So we did it in here the old-fashioned way with solvent and paintbrushes and air blowers. And we've got it pretty darn good. All the passages are blown out. There's no junk in it. So despite making a big, gigantic mess, we can go ahead and start putting this thing together. I went ahead and cleaned the main studs and reinstalled them. I cleaned the main bearing caps and I've reinstalled them with the original main bearings, because if you recall, when we took it apart, they showed no signs of wear and they looked good. Now, that could also be an indication when they show no signs of wear that they're the wrong ones. I've seen more than once like a set of standard main bearings on a 10 under crank, and the thing will have no oil pressure and be a big problem. So anyway, what we're going to do, we got the studs, we're going to put the caps with the shells back in, torque it all down, and we're going to just take a few quick measurements and make sure we've got good bearing clearance. And all three journals on our crankshaft measured out at 2.249. So we've got 1 thou of clearance on number 2 and number 3, and we've got a little more on number 1. Number 1 will wear a little bit more because you got the belt pulling on it and stuff. It's not really that big a deal. It's about 1.5 thou, which is still acceptable. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead. We're going to blow all the oil holes out in this crankshaft. Make sure it's spotless clean inside. We'll pull our main caps back off and we'll start getting ready to put the crankshaft in. Once we start working on one of these engines, the first thing we want to do is get our rear seals and our front seals and throw them in a bucket of oil and let them soak in there until we're ready to use them. Now we can install our rear main seal retainer. So this guy goes in here like this, sits in the back of the block, and the upper half of our rear main seal goes in this. Theoretically, you do not need to put any sealer on this, but I'll usually, let's see here, I'll put it down. Right around there, right here, I'll put a little Permatex too, just to give it a fighting chance if anything does sneak by. By the very design of it, it repels oil back into the crankcase, theoretically. But there's always that little bit that's going to want to come out. And once we got our bit of Permatex on, we can just drop him home right in there. Oh. And we just want to get it flush with the block. There we go. Let's check it on each side. There we go. So here's half. The top half and bottom half are the same. We dug it out of the oil. We dug it out of the oil can. So we're just going to get it in there. You just start it in with your fingers, right? And then you get a piece of pipe or a big socket or something, and you start working it down into that retainer. And the goal being to have an equal amount sticking out on either side. So I used a great big socket and a hammer, and I managed to get that thing worked down into that groove. Now, your results may vary, and however you've always done it, do it. But me personally, you see this bit sticking up here? As tempting as it is to cut that off, don't. I've never cut one of these in my life, ever, and I've never had a problem. The other half goes in the bottom of the oil pan, and when you torque all these little bolts down, it just scrunches it right down, and I've never had a problem. Some guys do like to cut them off just above flush, but I don't. So what we can do now is we can oil up these bearings, and we're going to get the crankshaft dropped in. We'll get the thrust cap number 2 and number 3 caps on. And before we put number 1 on, we're going to go over to the bench and have a look at the oil pump. So, this is awesome. We're putting the crank back in. So, we'll put a little oil on these bearings. Make sure you get both sides of the thrust. Now we'll go get our crankshaft. I probably could have measured the throws before I did this, but pretty sure we measured them before when we took the thing apart. There we go. Now, if you're trying to turn it right now, it'll be a little reluctant to turn because it's sitting on that seal there, and it just won't want to turn. But we'll get it sorted out. So now we're going to oil up these mains. And we're going to oil up the threads on the studs. The main caps are all unique. It's impossible to put them in the wrong place. Number 2 is the thrust. It goes in the middle. It has to. And they've got it. If you don't drop it on the floor. It's tough, it didn't break. They've got an arrow you can see there that points forward. And number 3, it's unique. It's a narrow one. And number 1, of course, has the oil pump built into it. So it's pretty hard to confuse that for any of the other ones. And we're not going to torque these guys until we've got the oil pump sorted out and got the number 1 main installed. But for now, we can get these guys. And these are the old original Castle nuts. And once we're done, we torque them up and then advance the nuts until the next place where the Castle lines up, and we safety wire them. There we are. Now that we've got those spun down, we're going to go over to the bench and have a look at our oil pump. These engines are notorious for low oil pressure, so anything we can do to help them have oil pressure is a good thing. This one has got nice main bearings, and the cam felt nice when we took it apart, so it's got tight cam bearings, so that's going to be a help for sure with the oil pressure. I'm not anticipating too much trouble with this one. But what we do need to do is have a look at the oil pump. And with these things, the oil pump is integral to the front main bearing cap. So you can buy a new oil pump for it, but it comes with the whole cap. And once you change that, you need to have this engine line board. So we would like to avoid that if at all possible. So we're going to get this thing in the vise, and we'll pull this oil pump apart and see what it looks like inside. Mostly what happens to these oil pumps is the bushing. There's a bushing in here that this shaft runs on. And the bushing wears out, which lets the gear start flopping around inside the pump body, and it eggs the pump body out, which, well, that's going to take all your pressure away. So we're just going to have a fast look at this one. Just turning it from the outside, it actually feels really nice. I think we've got us a good oil pump here, but it doesn't hurt to pop the cover off and have a look, does it? So we will do that. We can give it a clean up, check it out. We will like to, we will pack it with grease so that when the engine first starts up, the pump has got the ability to pump, because the grease kind of primes it. So you can see here, that gear does flop around a little bit. But again, there's not really a lot we're going to be able to do with it. So what we're going to do is, where's my sanding block? We'll just give this a touch with the sanding block. Make sure there's no hunks of gasket left behind. And what I do sometimes with these, if they've got a little wear in them, I put them back together with just a bit of Permatex on there and no gasket at all, and that will tighten them up a bit. But you have to try it first. You gotta scrape the gasket off and just bolt the cover down and make sure that the pump will still turn, because you don't want to bind it, right? So you can see here it has chewed into the cover a little bit. So that's definitely going to cost you a little bit of pressure. All we can do is, like I said, I'm going to bolt it down without a gasket, and we'll see how it feels. So we can see without a gasket, no problem. It turns just fine. So we'll do that. I'm going to take it back apart. I'm going to pack the cavities in there with grease. So when it first starts up, it can move some oil. It'll create some suction. And we will put a little Permatex around the cover, tighten it up, safety wire it, and this can go back on. Once we got the bolts on the cover wired up, we make sure too that around the inlet here, you see the Permatex spewing out. We know that's sealed. And what I did was the outlet of the pump right here, I put just a little Permatex around it. So when we torque this cap down, we know 100% we got a good seal and we'll have no leakage there. This is the pressurized side of the pump. I went around with my big torque wrench and I torqued all of these nuts to 80 foot-pounds. What I got to do now is get a flashlight and a Johnson bar and advance each one of these until I can see through a path that I can get the wire, so I can wire these things up. In the end, I gave up on the wire and used cotter pins. I'm pretty sure that's how they were originally anyway. So now we've come to the camshaft and I need to make a decision. We've got two cams here. This is a proper 1939 camshaft and this is a later one. So you can see the change that they made. They made a couple of changes. The first change they made, you can see that this one has got the little eccentric to drive a mechanical fuel pump. As they started using these engines in industrial applications. This one also, you can see here, it has a full groove all the way around for oil that lines up with the oil hole in the journal in the block, whereas this one has just got this little zing and 180 degrees. Oh, it doesn't have one. On this journal, the middle journal does. It's got one there, and it's got one there. So I think what they were trying to do is every time this came around and it lined up with the journal, it would oil the cam journal, and it would also shoot a little bit at the lobes on the camshaft. Whereas this one, you can see, wasn't doing that. I kind of think it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So we're just going to go with proper and put the 1939 camshaft back in it. I don't think we're going to have a problem with it wiping out the lobes or anything. I mean, the lobes on this have lasted since 1939 and they haven't got wiped out, right? So we'll oil this thing up and start sliding it in. And When we get close, I'll show you the timing marks and how we line them up. Another thing to note on these, there are no separate installed cam bushings in the block. These things run directly right on a honed bore in the cast iron block. So you can see our timing marks, a little circle on the cam gear, or the crank sprocket, and a line on the cam sprocket. This still has the original fiber cam gear. It's fine, so we just leave it there. Nice for silent running. When you put this thing in, lube up the 3 journals. You can also oil up the lobes, and make sure you oil the back face of the camshaft that runs against the engine block. There's no separate thrust washer in there. It's just cam against block. And I'm pretty sure we should have some kind of a little thrust button, I think, that goes on the front of this. We'll figure that out in a jiff. Something also interesting to note is that you'll see when the timing marks line up, the engine is not at top dead center. It's 90 degrees from it, in the middle of its stroke. That's just how they decided to do it. Here's our timing cover. It's the correct aluminum one for an early tractor. Later they would change these things to cast iron. As you recall, we've got a fiber gear on the camshaft, and that gear just basically floats between the front of the block and the inside of the timing cover. There's no separate thrust washers. When you get into the ones with the aluminum gear, like those ones over there, there is a little thrust button that goes on the front of it, but this one does not use that. So what we need to do is we need to put the upper half of the front rope seal in before we put this on. And we have to make sure we use the right gasket. In your kit, you'll get 2 gaskets. One of them is for a front distributor tractor. The other one is for a side distributor. So just make sure you've got the right gasket on there. Man, let me rummage around on the bench here. This place is such a mess. And the only way I could clean it up is by putting some stuff back together. So here we are. There's the one half of it. It's been soaking in oil overnight. I think there is a Ford part from a flathead V8 that's actually a one-piece seal that you can use in these things, but, well, we don't have one, so we're using this. And quite frankly, I've used lots of these before and had no trouble. So what we do is we get a socket. I think in this case it's a 1-inch socket. We get this thing as centered as we can, and in she goes. Same with the back one. We'll get it as centered as we can, so we've got equal amounts sticking up on both sides. There. Now we can go ahead and get this cover installed. Got our new gasket stuck on there with a little bit of black RTV. We're just letting it skin up for a sec, and then we'll go pop this cover on. I've put a little oil on the thrust surface for the camshaft. Now we'll just get her in there. It's got to go on a couple of dowels. So there we go. And it just takes a little tap to get it over the dowels. Good. Now we'll get our bolts and bolt her down. We'll get around the corner here. This is a little flimsy the way it sticks out here. So they have this little guy that goes on here like this. It stiffens and closes in this extension of the timing cover, provides a mounting spot for the governor. So we're going to go ahead and get this guy on now. It again, being 1939, this is cast from aluminum or zinc or magnesium or something. And later, these will be replaced by cast iron parts. So we need to find a little gasket for this, get it set, ready to go on, and find the bolts. So there's a couple of things that we need to keep in mind when we install this guy. There's no dowels. So we have to be very careful about just willy-nilly pulling the bolts in, because you could get the thing cocked, something could crack, or you could pull the timing cover back and bind up the cam gear. We don't want that. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that there's a lot of right angle joints and stuff on this that we need to make sure they're sealed, because that's where these things will leak. So we get a little bit of goo in all of these corners here, just to make sure that this guy isn't going to leak. Because we don't want leaks, do we? So we just slowly kind of work it into position. There we go. And then the bolts, we'll just kind of one by one kind of walk them in gently, so that we're not really pulling too hard in any one direction. And then we'll have it licked. Because we're not painting this thing right now, I want to paint it later. So I don't want it leaking all over itself if we're going to be painting it. There we go. Now let's start it. Some of these gaskets leave a little bit to be desired in the fit department. Oh, there's another one there. Okay, let me get my speed handle. Come on. Some of these you got to kind of get the bolts worked through the gasket. Maybe got to pull the bottom of this in a little bit. Without knocking the camera flying, of course. Let's try that. There she goes. Oh, almost had it. Come on. Yep, we got it. Okay. Okay, so just kind of don't really tighten anything too much. Let me move this back until we know we've got this thing kind of set where we want it. Look at that, there's a dang stud in the way. Oh well, we'll deal with that after. So we can see here, just with the feel, that this thing is a little bit high. So we're going to try and tap it down a little bit. All we could do is try. It may just be the way it's machined. We may not have a lot of hope getting this thing to move. But nothing stopping us from trying, is there? Okay, well, we didn't get it all the way, but we did get it a bit. So now we could just kind of slowly go around and tweak these bolts. And as we tighten it, if there's any strain on anything, we just kind of go around and give everything a couple of love taps. And that'll kind of relieve any odd pulls or anything that we've got going on. Now we're going to go ahead and torque this thing to 30 foot-pounds. Oh, sorry. Oh, brother. Okay, there we go. We're going to torque it to 30 foot-pounds, except for that one goofy bolt that the stud is in the way. Look at that, would you? We'll just do that one with a wrench as best as we can, rather than pull the stud out. There we go. And in this corner here, we just temporarily installed a bolt. That's the lower bolt for the actual governor. So we just put a bolt in there, holds that all together, and keeps that gasket squashed down. Now, what we need to do, the last thing, is we need to make sure that the camshaft has end play. Let's see if you can see it. You can hear it. Listen. Yeah, so we're all set there. No bind. Last thing we have to do in the valve cover, or the timing cover, pardon me, is install our oil pressure relief valve assembly. In the gasket kit, they give you like a fiber kind of gasket. This one, the original copper gasket, is kind of embedded in our aluminum cover. So we're going to stick with this, and hopefully it doesn't leak. What we will do is maybe put a little Permatex around the thread, just to give it a fighting chance. It's very important that this thing is installed. It gets forgotten, left out, all kinds of oil pressure problems. You see right there, there's a little flat spot on it. That's not a defect. That's how it's supposed to be. So we'll get this in here and tighten it up. If you've got one that's been sitting a long time and you can't get the thing to build oil pressure when you start it up, I've got a little rig that I made up that I unscrew this and I screw this little 90-degree adapter in, and I could stick a transmission funnel in it, and I drain all the oil out of the engine and refill it through here. It takes a long time, but it'll usually get them primed up and they'll have oil pressure when they start. This is looking good, eh? Now we're going to put the crank pulley on. So here's our crank pulley. You can see it's got that little notch in there, which corresponds with that little square key that's driven into the crankshaft right there. So I could theoretically wait until I have the oil pan on to install this, but it can be a pain sometimes with a new seal trying to get this thing to go through there. So we're just going to put it on for now, and then we can put the bolt in, and that gives us a means to turn the engine while we're working on it. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to put some anti-seize around the inner bore of this pulley, because they do have a habit of getting stuck on there. And we'll oil up the outside of it, and we should be able to just tap it in. Okay, here goes nothing. I've had some of these pulleys, they get on there so good they come off in pieces. And then other ones, we're off just a hair, I think. Well, it looks like it's going on. Let me look here. Where's my light? Yeah, it should go. There she goes. Good. That's that on. And now we've got the special bolt that's got the castle on the end of it for turning it with a hand crank. I put some anti-seize on the threads, and on the back face of the hex, I put sealer, because what will happen is oil will wick out between the crankshaft and the pulley, and it'll leak all over the place. So hopefully that will nip that in the bud. I'm not talking gallons, but it does a little bit will come out. Okay. All right, let me grab a socket, and we'll just give that a little pop with the impact gun and make sure that gets in there good and tight. There we go. Now we're going to seal up this side of the block, the coolant side of the block. I've already screwed in the little drain tap, and now we have to replace the core plugs. So these are the flat type. So how you install these is they fit in this counter bore there. You get them in there, and then you whack them with a hammer, and it flattens them out. And when they flatten out, they spread, and that cinches them into the bore. This one is a little bit rough looking. So what we're going to do with both of these is we're going to put some sealant around there. I'm going to use Permatex number 2. It just seems to be really good for this sort of thing. So we're gonna, this one's probably gonna need quite a bit. Now, lucky for us, these 9 ends, it's a non-pressurized cooling system. So these things at least don't have to hold pressure. They just have to hold the water back. And if you're looking to do this job yourself, they're 1 3/16. Kind of an oddball size. I had to go to the auto parts place and actually order them in because it's not something they even stock. So first we're going to get these things set in here. And we're going to tap them, just tap them into their bores with a socket. So we know they're in their bores. All right, and then once they're in, you just really carefully get the hammer in, and that spreads them out. There. Now we can start getting the rods and pistons ready to go in. So first thing we want to do is measure our crankshaft. We measured it before, but let's measure it again. The nominal dimension on these is 2.094. That's for a standard throw. So we're going to check this one. We'll measure it 90 degrees. Let's see what we got here. 5 and 7. .094. This is an interesting one. This is the one with the little pits in it, but it was running like that, so 2.094. Yeah, good. So we've got a nice standard crankshaft here. We'll check number 1. Or sorry, number 4. And hopefully we'll get the same thing there. So what we're going to do here, we're going to do times 4. We're going to grab the connecting rod in the vise. We grab it by here, not by the beam. Okay? You don't have to squeeze the hell out of it and mar the surface, just enough to hold it. And we're going to get the cap off. Which is not always as easy as it seems. Darn thing. Hang on. Oh, big screwdriver. There we go. Sometimes these things pop right off. Sometimes, well, not so much. So, this rod bearing was actually not too bad, but this rod bearing was not too bad. But some of them did have some stuff embedded in them. So we just ordered a set. They're cheap enough. We ordered a set of standard bearings. Look at these. Look at that. Ford scripts on them. Isn't that cool? So we're going to go ahead. We're going to put a new bearing in there. We're going to torque it down. And then we're going to check it for crush. And then we'll be all set. Man, they wrap them up really well, I'll tell you that. So remember, The crank pins were 2.094. So when we measure inside these rod bearings, we want to check our clearance. We want to see, 2.095, 2.096 maximum. We'll see what we've got. So we're going to go ahead and torque these to about 35, and then we'll measure it up. I should have run them down with the speeder. Oh, well, doesn't matter. This is how we're doing it. Okay, there we go. It's torqued to 35. Let's see what we got. 2.095 and a half. So that's about 2.5 thou of oil clearance. Maybe a little more than you'd like to see, but let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. These inside mics take a little bit of a feel. Yeah, that's what we're getting. Okay, so once we got that, then what we want to do is loosen the nut on one side and check for crush. So what that means, is that when we torque the cap down, it is crushing. It's crushing the bearing sufficiently that when we release the one nut, it should pop that cap up, and we should be able to get a feeler gauge in there. And yes, we can. So we've got good crush on that bearing. All right, we're going to do that 4 more times, check the other 4 rods, and then I'll be back. All right, now we're going to check our piston ring gaps. So here's our set of rings. Each one is in its own little pouch and it shows you the location. So what we need to do is we need to push the rings down into the bores and make sure that they've got adequate end gap, because as the rings warm up, they expand. And if they expand to the point where the ends of the ring touch each other, they will stick in the bore and it won't have a happy ending. So what we do, we're going to start with our top compression ring. Here he is here, right? We're going to get it in the bore. And then we're just going to use this piston here and push it down. Push it down into the bore so you get to the point where the bore has the least amount of wear. Now the factory for a gap wants 12 to 17 thousandths, but up to 35 is acceptable. So we're checking it with a 14 thou feeler gauge, and it goes in and out of there no problem. So that's the top ring, good. And we're not just checking to see if our bores are okay to fit our rings to. Sometimes you get a wrong ring in the package, you know. you'll get a package of standard rings and one of them will be 10 over. So you really need to check this stuff. Okay, now we're going to check the second compression ring. You don't want to check them right at the top because if there's any wear there, it's going to throw off your reading. You want to check it at the tightest part in the cylinder, and that's right down at the bottom. Okay, this one here, second compression ring, 14th thou, no problem, goes right in. And lastly, we'll check the oil scrapers. Those ones, they can be maybe a little bit more on the tight side because they're furthest away from the heat, right? Yep, no problem. We got one more to go here. You can't really see it, can you? I'm sorry about that. So anyway, you could, let me see here. Where are you? I'm looking at the valve there. Okay, there, you can see the gap. See, there's the gap in the ring. Wow, it's having a hard time focusing. But you can see the gap, and our feeler gauge goes in it no problem. So we're good there. Then when we're all done, we put them all back in their little pouches. And they don't go back in as easily as they come out. There we go. And write that this is for cylinder number 1. Now we can start messing with pistons. Now we can start working on our pistons. We're not going to be taking them off the rods. Well, that is so long as we can determine that they're okay. So what you're looking for, you don't want to see any big gouges or anything on the skirt. You don't want any erosion right around there. That's bad. And you also want to make sure the wrist pin feels nice. You can't feel any play in there. And we want to check our rings that they don't move up and down in their grooves. That would indicate that the ring grooves are worn out. Then you'll get ring flutter, and that's no good. We don't want that. But so long as the other 3 check out nice like this one, we can clean them up and reuse them. Once we've determined that our pistons are definitely usable, we just got to clean them up a little bit. These ones are in really nice shape. You get a compression ring and break it in half, and you just get it in there, and you just go around there like that. And if there's any junk in those grooves, it'll cut through it and break it up. There's hardly anything in these. Sometimes they'll get all full of carbon, but this is very nice and clean. So you just go around there and get them all cleaned up, and then we can start putting the new rings on. Alrighty, now we can put our rings on. We're ready. We're getting there, eh? So first we're going to put on the expander, and there's certain spots on the ring or on the piston where it's wide open for the oil to return back to the sump. We don't want to put the gap of the expander against that. We want the gap of the expander somewhere where the piston is solid, or at least that's how I do it. All right, just like that. And then we can put our oil rings, our scraper rings on. They're not marked top or bottom, so they don't have a top or bottom. So we're going to get this one in first. We're going to put one gap over here and one gap over there. And you just slowly kind of spiral it down over. Oh, what do we do here? We've got some gobbledygook on the other side here. Oh, I see. There we go. And you want to make sure that once you got it in, that it's still nice and free. We're good. And you also want to make sure that your gap in the expander doesn't overlap itself. That's also bad. So now we'll get our top scraper. And you just work that down like that. The oil rings that came off of this were one piece. There you go. That, perfect. And now our compression rings. So we're going to put the number 2 compression ring on first. And these are marked. See that one? It's marked. There's all kinds of different ways of marking rings. But that one you can see there, it's marked 2 top. So you want to make sure that's the top. You can use a ring stretcher like this to put it on. Look at that. Beautiful. And number 1, the top compression ring. It's the same thing. It's marked 1 top. So we're going to put that on the top. Oops. There we go. So you can stagger your gaps around a little bit. I don't like having gaps right over the wrist pin. I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. These things, once the engine gets running, the rings kind of float and rotate around. You know, it's not that big a deal. Some manuals, they will give you, like, I remember when I used to build neon engines for my race car, if you went by the manual, it was very specific about where it wanted every single gap. They're not all like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get some oil squeezed into these rings here. We could drop a little bit on the wrist pin. On the wrist pin also. Good. Now, this is number 3. That's just no particular order. That's just the way it came out of the pile. Number 3 came out of the pile first. So that's what we're putting in first. Now we get our ring compressor. Put it over top there. This is an excellent, good used one that I bought at the auction. It's still got its lot number tag on it. There. Okay. Now we're going to go over to the engine. I've already got the crank oriented with the pin for this at the bottom. That's how I like to do it. And we'll get this thing put in. So we're going to make sure we got the right hole, number 3. And we're going to get some oil. And we're just going to paint that bore all the way down with oil. We've put a little oil on the rod bearing. And we're going to install it. You can see the piston has a notch right there. The notch faces forward. So it goes in just like that. I guess it also bears noting that the ring compressor has a top and bottom. Where's the little tool? The little tool that you use to operate it, you won't be able to, let me turn it down here. You won't be able to install the tool in upside down. What's unique about this is you can see it's got these little dings in the bottom of it that keep the compressor from going right down the engine with the piston. So we'll get that there. So I've got this piece of nylon or something and a rubber hammer, and we're just going to gently tap this thing down. You don't want to hit it too hard or the bearing shell falls out. And then all of a sudden you'll hear the rings go click. There we go, she's in. And because it's an inline engine, it's pretty easy. You don't have to worry too much about guiding the rod over the crankshaft like you do in a V8, where everything's kind of going on angles. These things just pretty much go straight down. Let's just make sure here. Yeah, here it comes. It's going over the crank pin. No problem. There we are. She's home. Now we'll flip it over and put the cap on, install the nuts, torque them. You could, quite frankly, with an inline engine like this, you could install all 4 of them from the top and then flip it over and put all 4 caps on if you wanted to do it that way. But I just want to show you one, and then I'll do the other 3 on my own. And number 3 on these is the one right underneath the oil pickup. So when you put the cap on, you have to make sure you don't put it on backwards, because this is bored and honed as a unit, right? So you can see the index tang, they both go to the same side. We can see the other one is over there. And we'll also see once we're done that the number on the cap and the rod will be on the same side. So we'll run these down with the speeder. And then I just need to double check the torque spec on these. These are the later style nuts, the locking nuts. The earlier ones used a Castle nut and a cotter pin. Some of them used a normal nut and then a little pal nut on top of it to lock it. There were several different ways of doing these rod nuts over the years of the production of these things. So let me double check that torque value. I will be right back. The torque spec on these nuts is 35 to 40. So I've gone right in the middle and picked 37 and a half. There we go. And then once we've got that torqued, we'll just spin the thing around 1 full revolution. Oh, listen to those rings on that nice new crosshatch. Beautiful. To make sure that everything's good and we haven't got anything binding or tight. There we are. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do the other 3 and I'll be back when I'm done. That's it. All 4 pistons are in. So we're just going to turn it around a little bit here and make sure everything's groovy, that it feels good. No tight spots or anything. Yeah, seems pretty darn good. Good. We'll bring number 1 up to top dead center and leave her there. All right. Now it's time to mess with the valve train. I guess we could put the oil pan on too, couldn't we? And just get the bottom of this thing closed up. That's maybe a good idea. Let's do that. We got the inside of our oil pan cleaned up. And now we're going to talk about the gasket. So if you put the gaskets on just the way they come out of the package, you can see here it sits on top of the packing for the seal. We don't want that. So what I do anyway, I trim them back so that they don't sit on top of the seal. That's just what I do. Like I said before, your results may vary. So we're going to get a pair of scissors and trim these gaskets around this seal, front and rear, on both sides, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. And that's how it looks once I trim them up. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the back off. We don't have to put a ton of sealer on this, but anywhere where there's a joint, here and here, and back here, we're going to put a daub of sealer, and we're going to put a little bit around here where the gasket meets the seal. Then we can pound the seals, the other half of the seals, into the oil pan and send it home. Same method as before, we just used a big socket to get the seals worked into the grooves. I put a little bit of sealant on the ends of the seals and just a little dab in behind it here. Now we've got a pair of guide bolts, and we're going to get the oil pan lowered down into position. Then we can start bolting it up. This is a heavy oil pan, I'll tell you that, because it's a structural member. It's a stressed member, I guess you could call it. Oh, There. So now we'll get our bolts and start getting them run in, and you'll see how this thing just crunches down those front and rear seals. We went around the oil pan and torqued it all down to 20 foot-pounds. And you can see here, it squashed the gasket down good. You can see the sealant spewing out where our joints were. It crunched it right down. Crunched it down around the two halves of the front and rear seals. Like I said, I don't cut them. I know some guys do. I don't. Never cut one yet. Never had a problem. And I read the manual. At least my I&T manual makes no mention of cutting them. Anyway, once the oil pan is on, we're going to double check that this cotter pin is free and spins. This cotter pin rattles around in this hole, and its purpose is any oil that gets past the rear main seal, they want it to drip out here. So they put this cotter pin in there so it just rattles around while the engine's running and keeps the hole clear. Kind of neat. There's another one a little further back in the bottom of the dry part of the transmission housing. There's another cotter pin. Anyway, and the other thing we have to check is that the oil pickup is centered in the hole, because our filter screen has to go in there. And sometimes these things will be a little bit bent, and it makes it very difficult to get the screen in, because this actually goes in the cup of the oil pickup. And if you see that it's not exactly centered, honestly, you just reach in there with a big screwdriver and go and center it. I've done it more than once. So we're going to put a new gasket from our gasket kit on here and screw that in, and then we can put her right side up. So in she goes. Theoretically, on the bottom of this thing, it should have a square nub that you can grab with a 1 1/16 wrench. Although most of them, like this one, have been mangled over their lifetime by pipe wrenches, vice grips, guys hitting them with hammers and chisels. There we go. Camera was sitting on top of my wrench. But this one still seems to be serviceable enough. So we'll just, there. You don't have to kill it. Just got to be tight enough to not leak. To just finish up this side, I stuck the oil dipstick back in, and I put a little Permatex around the bottom of the breather tube and used a piece of hardwood to knock it in. The less places we have that stuff could fall in and go into the bottom of it, the better off we are, eh? The valve train in this thing was a disaster, to the point where I just went ahead and ordered a valve train kit. So it comes with everything. One-piece guides, new valves, holder inner thingies, retainers, locks, springs, seals. It's a complete kit. Sometimes it's really the only solution, and this was one of those times. So I'm going to do a couple just for practice, and then I'll come back and show you how we do it. Well, I have successfully installed the valves in cylinder number 1. The firing order is 1, 2, 4, 3. So we're going to go do number 2 next. So we have to turn the engine 180 degrees from where it is. And we'll be able to do that. Give me a sec. So we can see here, number 1 is just fired and the exhaust valve is starting to open to empty the cylinder on the piston's way up. But we've got this one here at top dead center firing, so we're going to get going with the valves. First thing we do is get a new guide and get it down in its bore. It doesn't have to go all the way down, just in. And then for the valve seats, I like to use these. These guys are not cheap, but they're just so wonderful to use. So much less hassle than the old Stones, you know. This here is the mandrel for the New Way seat cutter. Just goes in there, and then you tighten it up and it expands. The New Way seat cutters, you just turn them by hand. And you can hear it cut. And that's literally all you got to do, just that little bit. I mean, at least these seats are in decent shape, right? Let me get a better... There we go. That's a better look at it. So, you can see here the nice job that it does cutting it. So what we'll do now, we'll remove the mandrel. We'll blow all the chips out of there. And we'll grab an intake valve and see what it looks like. So we get our intake valve, and you can see there we put a few stripes of Sharpie across the face of it. And we'll drop her in there. And we'll just turn it a bit, and then we'll see where it's contacting the seat. There, you can see there, it's kind of close to the edge. We don't want that. We want to bring it up a little bit. So what we got to do now, put the mandrel back in. Now we're going to flip this thing around to the 31-degree side. We were cutting it at 46 before. And we're going to take a little bit off the top of the guide. And that'll start moving that contact pattern up the face of the valve. There, you can see now what we've cut. So same thing, we're going to blow the chips out. And we'll put some more Sharpie on our valve and see what it looks like this time. You just sneak up on it, you know, it's not a race. You don't want to take too much material. Yep, that moved it a bit. I think I would like to do just a tiny bit more, and then we should be in good shape. And if you want to make this a 3-angle valve job, you could get a 60-degree cutter and go right down in there when we were done. But, I mean, it's a tractor. We're doing a 2-angle valve job. And because, remember, we didn't, we got the valve kit, we didn't have to grind the valves. We would normally do that. Oh, I left the mandrel in there. Yeah, that's better. You can see we've moved it up more toward the middle of the face of the valve. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put a little lapping compound. Gonna put a little lapping compound on here. You don't need a ton. Just a little bit, and you kind of dab it around the face of the valve there like that. Sorry, it's hard to, I've got it blown up so I can see. It's hard to keep stuff in frame. Okay, so now I've lost my rag. I got lapping compound all over my finger and I've lost my rag. Okay, so we're gonna get our little lapper spinning thing in here. Drop our valve down in. Whoop. And you'll hear it. The sound kind of changes as you get it there. Gets quiet like that. There we go, we got it. Let's see what we've got. We'll clean the face of it off. Yeah, that's nice. Just how we want it. Okay, let's go over to the bench and put this thing together. So here's our intake valve all put together, ready to go in. On the intake valves only, we put the rubber seal, valve seal. They give you 8, but putting them on the exhaust, some guys will say, I always put them on the exhaust and don't have a problem. If you put them on the exhaust and really work the tractor hard, these things will get baked in there so bad, you'll never, ever in 1,000 years get them out. Now, unfortunately, I clicked the wrong button on my phone and we missed putting this all together, but we'll put it together on the next one. So, I put the exhaust in without the seals. You could put the seals on your exhaust if you want. I only put them on the intake. That's how they came. So we'll go over and get this thing installed in the engine, and then we'll do the exhaust. So we'll jiggle our follower down in. These are the ones that came out of it, and I numbered them. So they're going back in the same holes, back on the same lobes of the camshaft. So to get these little devils in, you got to, when you first start, just keep a little pressure on it so your locks don't fall out. Okay, here. Pull down. There we go. Get the guide started into its bore. Then what we got to do is we got to get up in here with a bar and pry, and all of a sudden it'll go pop. Hear that pop? That was the rubber seal going down into the bore. And then we put this guy in on underneath, and there, that's our intake valve in. Now we'll do the exhaust valve, same procedure, except this time I'll try to remember to film putting it together on the bench. So same procedure with the exhaust valve. Yeah, there we go. Very nice. That one's maybe up a little higher, but it's okay. It'll be just fine. So now we got to get our guide back out of there and go over to the bench and put it all together. Okay, so we put just a little motor oil on the stem here. Lower it down. I don't know how much of this I caught on the previous valve, so I'll have to rehash it all. These valve springs, they've got kind of a couple of coils that are closer together at one end. I just put them up. I should maybe one day read and see if I'm doing that right. Don't ask me. It's a 50-50 chance, right? Put the retainer on. Now we got 2 keepers. And again, exhaust valve. No rubber valve seal on this one. And then you got to kind of hold her up to hold this stuff all together. You're going to put a little oil around this guide so it slips in nice and easy. And we need one of our little clippy things. Okay, so same as the other one. We're going to put a little oil on our follower there. Our cam follower or lifter or whatever you want to call it. Jiggle that down into its bore. Down it goes. Now we're going to get our valve assembly. Drop it in there. And then just kind of keep a little tension down on the spring to keep our keepers from popping out. Now we can get in here with the screwdriver. Push the guide down into the bore. And put our little clip on underneath. Come on. Get on there, you little monster. There we go. No, I missed it. Dang it. There we go. God, no, what the heck is going on here? It's dark in there. There we go. Got it that time. You got to get it in the little groove. So that's that. That's one cylinder. How we do the valve job with, all new parts. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other 2 cylinders. And when I come back, we'll do the valve adjustment. Now we got this all together, we can adjust the valves. The factory specification cold is 10 to 12 on the intakes and 14 to 16 on the exhausts. So we'll go in the middle and call that 15 and 11. The first one here, it's an exhaust, so we're going to check it out. See what we got here. It's tight, really tight. So because somebody actually drilled this one, we can stick a punch in there. We don't have to use the little tool to hold these. It's way easier when they're drilled. From now on, any of them I got, I'm drilling them. These will probably all be tight because we got new valves, and new valves are always kind of... Okay, there we go. That's nice. It's a little bit draggy in there. Perfect. So let's check the intake. It's supposed to be 11. Oh, see, that's not bad. It's actually a little loose. There we go. A little more. A little more. Wow, it's a lot loose. Jeez. Starting to feel it a bit now. Maybe just a tiny bit more. Little tweak. There we go. Wow, this one, we're sneaking up on it. Okay, now it's tight. Just go back a little bit. That's a nice 11. That's a nice 15. I could probably just give that one a little tweaks. Snug that one up just a hair also. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so we'll do all of them. You just follow the firing order. So how we determined to start here was we've got number 1 piston at top dead center. Both the lifters are down. So we know she's up at top dead center on the compression stroke and about to fire. that's when you adjust the valves. And once you've got that, you just follow the firing order. You just keep turning it 180 degrees. The firing order is 1, 2, 4, 3. So we'll turn it over 180 degrees until number 2 piston comes up to the top. And we'll set the valves on number 2 all the way through. And I'll see you when we're done. I went down the line and got them all adjusted. Then I started over and went down and rechecked it, just because everything's new and stuff may settle in. And then probably after a few hours of runtime, it would be in our best interest to check it again. That's good. We're all set. Now we can close it up. So what I do with these things, these side covers, is I clean them up and I get new gaskets. I glue the gasket to the cover and grease the backside of it so it doesn't stick to the block, so I can pop them off anytime that I want. And I hopefully don't have to buy new gaskets. It works most of the time. That's looking like something now, eh? I got the covers on and I put the oil pressure fitting back in. Now we got to have some fun and get all these head studs cleaned up and put back in. This is an early one. It's supposed to have studs. And if it was just like a crappy worker bee old tractor, I'd toss all the studs in the garbage and put bolts in it. But it's a 39, so we'll put the studs back in it. Well, that was a chore, but we got them all in. And I put there's some that are a little bit longer. So I put 4 of them up in this corner. These 2 are for the bracket, for the torque shaft, for the throttle. And these 2 here, if we ever decide to put the proper generator with the tensioning strap, like if we put a C generator on it with the tensioning strap, you need a little bit longer studs. So you know what? We'll just put them in now. We have them. Let's put them in. But now, I'm trying to find what I did with all the nuts for the cylinder head. They're around here somewhere, or maybe I decided I would chuck them all and buy new ones. I just can't remember. Oh dear. Now we can put our cylinder head on. This is the original one that kind of belongs to it. So I would really like to use this head. We do see some damage here. Something's gone and put kind of a gouge right here. It's not so bad here. That's just a head bolt that goes through there. But right here, that is a water passage. And this could allow water to go into the chamber or leak to the outside. So reluctantly, I'm going to go over to the shed and see if I can find another early 9N cylinder head that we can use instead of this one. This one will need to go to the machine shop and be milled. And you have to be really careful when you mill these things because the piston comes very, very close to here. Very close. We found another 9N cylinder head that's got a red paint job on it, so it'll match the rest of our engine. We cleaned it up. Now we have to see if it's true. So we're allowed 4 thousandths in any direction. 4 thousandths out this way is a lot easier for the head bolts or studs to clamp down than 4 thousandths out that way. So what we want to do is first we're going to check that locks. We got 4.5 here, 3 and a 1.5. Locks, locks, locks. You understand what we're doing? If this area in here was low across there, we wouldn't be able to lock that feeler gauge. Even with the 1.5 thou, it locks. So the head is true this way. End to end, we're probably not going to have as much luck. Just the nature of the beast. So 4.5 thou. We're good there. It's a little draggy there. And in the center, it's a little bit loose. So we'll try 6 and see how that feels. For 2 thou, I'm not going to worry about it too much. Yeah, it's kind of tight over there. Add our 1.5. Let's go to 7.5. And it locks. So, you know, it's a little bit more than what we would like to see. But because it's this way that it's not true, we're gonna see what happens. We're gonna clamp this thing down. We're gonna go for it. If it was not true that way, we'd be screwed. It would have to go to the machine shop and be resurfaced. But I think we'll be okay with this one. I mean, I think of all the ones I just put on and didn't even check, you know. Imagine what some of them were like. And they were okay. Okay, so what we got to do, because this bugger's got the studs, we've got our head gasket sitting there. We're just going to slowly work it down over the studs until we've got it all the way down. Then we'll lubricate the threads and drop the cylinder head on. Okay, here comes the cylinder head. And these dang ones with the studs, they don't always just drop right down. Rubber mallet. The ones with the bolts are definitely more gooder. But like I said, this is an old girl and it's supposed to have studs. So it's got studs. Now we'll get some nuts, start winding them down and torque her up. Okay, now we'll start running these things down with a speed wrench. Just start in the middle and work your way out to the ends in kind of a circular pattern. All right, I checked the manual. It makes no mention of torquing them in stages. And it says if you've got studs and nuts, torque them to 55. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start in the middle and work our way out. There we go. And then we'll go over them again once we've gone around and double check because they usually settle down. And you just work your way out from the center. Okay, that's all of them. What we're going to do now, we're going to go back to the middle and we're going to redo it. You think this middle one will move any? Let's find out. Oh yeah. And as we work our way out, the second time around, they should move less and less. Yeah, these ones aren't moving too much at all. Okay. One more time. Yeah, that's good. That. Yeah, those aren't moving. Okay, there we go. And once we've had it running, we'll retorque it. Here we've got a set of good used Sparky plugs. They got kind of low miles on them, low usage. The factory, the manual calls for these to be gapped at 25 thou. This thing's going to be running on 12 volts and it should have a pretty decent spark. So I opened that up to 30 just to make sure we get a good hot spark. Should be okay. I usually do that. So we'll get these guys in there. That completely seals our combustion chambers now. So no junk is going to fall inside there. Because that would be bad after all the work we've done here. Now we're going to go ahead and get our oil filter canister cleaned up, get it installed. We've got the oil filter housing bolted to the cylinder head. That's honestly the easiest place to work on it. So what we got to do is we're going to put a new cartridge in it. But before we do that, the usual with these things, the drain plug, it's a 1/8 pipe plug. And for some reason, these things are always just destroyed from vice grips because they're always completely seized in there. And oh yeah, that one's no exception. I don't know how a little 1/8 pipe plug can get so stuck. There we go. It's a steel plug in a steel bung, and I think a lot of water gets in the bottom of these filters. So I get them out, and we put a brass one in. What do you say we get the lid off of this thing and see what's in there? I'm guessing whatever is in there is gross. What do you think? There we go. Now nothing came out when I took the plug out. Bolt. Oh yeah. Where's my little hammer? And then we'll have to figure out, look in our gasket kit and stuff and see if we've got gaskets for that. Oh, well, there's a filter in there. There's the remains of the old gasket on the underside of the lid. Let's see what this looks like. Man, that's hard to get a hold of, that little ring. Those things get stuck on there over time pretty well. They get stuck over the center tube in the housing. There we go. Oh, it's not bad, really. Now we need to understand the oil system on these. This is not a full flow oil filter like you have on your car, where everything that the oil pump pumps goes through the filter. This is a bypass filter. It's basically just a leak off the main oil gallery that comes around here through a tiny oil line, and only a portion of what the oil pump is pumping actually gets filtered. Now, there's quite a bit of muck in the bottom of this, but we're getting it clean. There you go, yeah, that's pretty good. Now you just have to put something in there to wipe it, and we should be okay. In the original incarnation of the 9N oiling system, the oil would be pumped into the filter, filtered, and then returned to the sump just with a little short line that connected this to that. Later, when they started discovering cases of undue wear in the engine governor, they plugged that and started running a line around to the governor. You could see The engine in our 9N actually has that set up. You can see here's the oil line coming around from the filter to squirt a little oil into the governor. And they found that helped. And it's okay to retrofit that onto your earlier 9Ns because it was a popular job at the dealership. If you brought the thing in for service, they would try to sell you on that modification. And you know what? Probably a good idea. So we got our new filter. We'll just stick that down in there. Come on. There we go. But we're not out of the woods yet because sometimes the box that these filters come in have a seal for the lid. Sometimes they don't. This one was in the category of don't. And the seal around this bolt head disintegrated when we took it apart. We have to find something for that too. So bear with me. I'm going to scrounge around in my junk and see what I can find. Well, in the end, I could not find a new gasket for the lid. I had nothing around here that would fit it. So, well, we said 3 Hail Marys and went with the old one. I did find a nice copper washer to put under the head of that bolt. Hopefully that won't leak. But, well, we won't know till we fire it up, eh? Oh, that's how it goes. So anyway, what we want to do now is close up this side of the engine. We got to get the governor, or a governor. And see, we've got a couple of candidates here. I'm going to see if I can find one that looks like it's decent. And we'll get that on there and the manifold. Well, we found a governor. It turns nice. So let's pop the cartridge out and see what's going on inside it. Make sure it's good to use. These things, there's not a lot to them. Not a lot at all. You just you remove this here screw. That's all that holds the weight mechanism in. We just want to make sure that it's not all chewed up. These things will get worn out, and the steel balls will start eating into everything in there. But this one is really nice. So I don't think we've got any trouble here. Seems pretty good, eh? Yep, so we'll just give the face of it a sand. So our new gasket will seal. A little compressed air, give her a blowout. Put the little screw back in. And this little fella can go right on the engine. It doesn't have to be timed or anything. It just goes in. Gotta find a gasket for it. Here it is. There is our governor gasket. So we'll go over there and get this thing installed. Okay. Now we can go ahead and install our governor. Got a new gasket on it. I just smeared a little bit of grease on the gear. I think I mentioned already, but if I didn't, I'll mention it now. This does not have to be timed. It just goes on. Come on. There we go. Bolt in the bottom. And a nut on the top. I'm not sure if we've got room for this lock washer, but we'll try it. Henry Ford wasn't really one for lock washers if it didn't need it. So you know what we just did, people? I think. Yeah. Oh. That's lovely, but that's an 8N governor. That's not going to work on this. Major fail. The 9N governor. Have we even got one? There. That's a 9N governor. It's got the extra arm here. Oh boy. So this one, it feels a little bit funny. So what we got to do is pull this thing back off. We got to get this freed up. And if we have to, take the cartridge out of this one and put it in that one. My bad. Well, thank goodness I didn't glue the gasket, eh? That's better. Now we've got a 9N governor on our 9N engine. Now we can see what we're going to do for a manifold. I found one out in my junk that seems to be pretty much decent. It's not all eaten away around the number 4 exhaust port. That's good. So I went ahead, I cleaned up the 4 studs, screwed them back in. Now I'm going to stick the head against the block and we're going to see what it looks like. I also managed in my junk to find a complete set of the special thin wall nuts, brass nuts that hold it on. Although a couple of them aren't looking so hot. Anyway, we'll see how that works out. We've got the manifold test fit, and you can definitely see there's a pronounced gap between the number 4 port of the manifold and that part of the engine block. So we're going to have to come up with some kind of an action plan to deal with that. I'm going to pull the manifold back off. We'll see if it's straight or not straight. Unfortunately, it's just a fact of life with these things. That happens to a lot of them. And they blow the gasket out around there, and you end up having to endlessly listen to the thing going where the gasket's blown. Drives me crazy. Well, we'll see if this works. I built up around these ports with JB Weld exhaust sealer. We'll see if this stuff skins up or dries or whatever it is it's going to do. In the meantime, I got to go over to the barn and look for a couple of oil lines that we're going to need for this thing. We need the one that comes around to the filter, and then we need the one that goes from the filter to the governor. I probably have some. It's just a matter of finding them. Okay, I found a couple of lines. And while I wait for that exhaust cement to set up, I'll go ahead and put them on. I cleaned them up. I blew some air through them to make sure that they were clear. So we're all set. More parts we don't have to buy. Oh, and it's always good when you can avoid buying parts. Me a 7/16 wrench. There we go. Okay. So first one, no. This guy here. He goes around here. Okay, there it goes. We got it. Okay. We're not going to tighten that one though, because we got to get this end popped in here and get it going. These things, sometimes when they're old, they've been tweaked or otherwise kind of rejigged along the way. But we got it. It's going in. Okay, now, this fitting here that's screwed into the filter, before I tighten that line, I'm going to put a wrench on it and make sure it gets tight in the filter housing. Because it's just a pipe thread. Oh yeah, it's tight. Okay, good. There we are. And now we'll tighten up this end. So now we've got oil flowing to our filter. You can buy all this stuff new, don't get me wrong. But, well, we can also recycle, can't we? Okay, and there goes that one in. So now we'll have the factory upgraded lubricated governor. Upgrade! There we go. And there's, as far as I know, I don't recall any kind of clip on this or anything like that. It just goes on like that. Now, what we have to put on is a little clippy thing for the ignition wires. This little guy here. He goes on this bolt. And when you're so fortunate to actually have an engine that still had one of these on it, well, you have to put it back. That's an original Ford part. I got to clean it up a little bit. We'll straighten it out some and then I'll put it on. Goes on this bolt right here. There. Goes just like that. We could tweak it a little bit once we get the thing together. Okay. So now we're going to put this manifold on. And what I found out, this manifold is a little bit thinner casting than some of the ones I've dealt with before. So we can actually use thick wall nuts in it, so long as we turn them with a 3/8 drive socket, and we'll be able to tighten it up good rather than not so good with the brass nuts. So we're going to do that. Here we go. Well, we're going to have to work our way from back to front, I guess. There we go. Have I got room for lock washers? I think I do. But do we really need them? Probably not. I'm probably better off without lock washers on this. Okay, so now I've got them all started on. Now I'm going to get my long ratchet and an extension here. And we're going to reef these things up. I'm going to start at the back here. I'm going to, oh sorry, you can't see there. I'm going to tighten the nut all the way at the back first because that's where it's worse. And it'll kind of pull that thing in. Oh yeah, I can see it squeezing that stuff out. Good. And then we're going to tighten this end because it's also not too good. Good. And then we'll tighten these two. And I think we'll be okay. Because this guck, this JB Weld stuff is going to sit here and get hard. It's not like we're going to fire the engine up in 5 minutes, right? And there we go. So here's our engine ready to go in the tractor. Awesome. We'll be using a few bits off of that, like the water pump, the alternator, the distributor, the starter, and the carburetor. as well as the wire tube. And then I guess while we're at it, I'll do some wiring on it. I don't think I'm going to lay all the lights and everything in. In fact, I'll probably, that CM Hall light that's on it, I'll probably just take that off and put it back together with no lights. Well, we'll see. It's all time dependent. I've got a lot of stuff I've got to get done in the near future. But anyway, for now, there she is. So that'll do it for that one. We got our engine all back together and it's ready to go in the tractor. I was a little maybe over optimistic at the beginning of this. I said we would build the engine swap. I didn't get it running. Well, turns out that would probably end up being about a 5-hour long video. No, we're not doing that. 2 hours and the bit that this is plenty for one shot. So with that said and done, in the next video, we're going to get back to normal length videos. We're going to get this engine swapped into our 39.9N, and probably a video following that, we're going to get all the electrical done and get it fired up. Anyway, until then, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I'd like to thank you for spending your Christmas Day evening with me while we do this engine. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next time, I guess. And until then, I'm Kevin, saying so long from the Claremont Classic Garage. Ciao for now.